Hey everybody, welcome to Experience This. We're in season 3 and this is show 6 and we've got a great one in store if you care about AI and AI search, which I think most of you do. So let me introduce our co-hosts and then Christian will introduce our special guest for today. Lori Timoney from Go City and Christian Watts from Magpie. Say hello to our esteemed audience out there.
Hey, esteemed audience. Lori Timoney here from Go City. Good to be with you and happy to have Chris joining us today. Looking forward to the chat.
Hey guys, Christian from Magpie. Everyone knows I think it's my favorite subject. And actually, the AI search and discovery part is my favorite part of AI this year. So, really looking forward to this. So, today we have Chris Andrew, who I believe just launched the brand Scrunch AI. Can you just give us a quick intro, Chris, and tell us what you're up to?
Yeah, Bruce, Christian, Lori, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm thrilled to be here. And, we launched Scrunch AI out of beta about 10 days ago, early March. We've been building the platform for the last 18 months, really working closely with a number of organizations to understand the impact to the customer journey. I think very simply, I observed that my behavior as a consumer was changing. I was moving away from a pure Google experience to relying on GPT, Perplexity, Google AI overviews to guide my purchases, my research, how I evaluate where to spend time, where to go on trips. And simply, I think that means the customer journey is changing. I'm getting an answer from AI instead of 20 links from Google. And so I'm browsing less. And so we decided to build a marketing platform to help organizations think about, well, how do I retain control of my customer journey in a world that I'm kind of getting disintermediated? My brand, my product, my tour, my service is being represented through GPT, Google, Perplexity in a different way. So we raised a $4 million round of funding, came out of beta mode in early March, and have signed up a little over 25, 30 customers at this stage and growing, and excited to be chatting with you all today.
Just start with something really basic that you just kind of threw in there. You've been in business, you just launched. For how long ago did you launch?
We came out of stealth mode late November, so we kind of announced beta ending in March. So it's been a little under 3 months.
A little under 3 months, just went public and already raised $4 million. How did you do that?
How do we do that? We've got great relationships from building in the technology space for a long time. Honestly, I think business is relationship driven, whether you're in travel and tourism or you're in technology or whatever category you're in. And I spent 11 years building my last startup. People tend to move around in technology a lot. I spent 11 years building the business. I was the first employee to join 2 founders and built a community of investors and partners that I knew I would want to work with again. And so one of the fun things about building a new company is finding the people I know I want to work with, investors I know I want to partner with. And so when we were building a new company, the investor reached out to me from Mayfield, an excellent firm out in Silicon Valley, and said, we want to support you guys. We want to partner with you for what you're building. And so it was pretty organic. And then I went out to my network of people that I've invested in, and they've invested in me over the years, said, hey, we've got a little bit of availability. Do you want to make angel investments alongside a lead check? And so that process was fairly organic, but I guess it's kind of like when you ask Picasso, it only took you 10 seconds to make that painting. He's like, no, it took me 40 years. It's that, right? It's like you build a network and a community over time, and hopefully you find people that want to work with you again.
Well, congrats on that.
Very good.
Awesome. Yeah. So
You could be Bruce. You could be Ilya Sutskever. He was the chief scientist at OpenAI, and he left, and he started a new company. I think on day one it was worth 10 billion. So it's possible to do anything with AI these days.
There are different levels. Good luck. I'm not in that science category. He's a genius.
Yeah.
well, why don't you give us an overview? Maybe start with a little bit of an elevator pitch and then bring it down, and then maybe we'll do a little show and tell of what is Scrunch and why should we all care?
Yeah. I think we talked about maybe I'll just share my screen for a minute for anybody that's doing more than listening. And we can flip through just a little bit about what the customer journey, what the impact of the customer journey has looked like. And so, our thesis at Scrunch has been we're moving towards a world of answers instead of links. And I know I mentioned it in the quick overview, but this idea that the first thing we've outsourced at scale to AI without realizing it is browsing. And as we were building the company, we met a lot of organizations that were really thinking about their internal data sets. Like, how do we organize and clean up our internal data for AI workflows? My observation was that all of the external data in the world was already being used by AI to answer questions about your brand, your city, your product, your experience. Anything that's available in the public was being used, and it's used to generate an answer. And so we thought we'd help organizations try to better understand that. And at its simplest, I think we're moving from a world that you talk to a marketer and they're like, I used to build websites for humans. Then I started building websites really just for Google. Like if you talk to a CMO or a marketing director, like my website is just to get found by Google, to show up in listings and maps, organic, paid. That shift is moving to large language models, right? We're moving into a world where when I ask a question, I get different results from Google organic search versus GPT versus Google's Gemini. And so thinking about what is different about what these large language models are looking for. And the quick secret is large language models want language, right? They are looking for unstructured data to reflect answers back to consumers. And so this is kind of my 30-second cheeky, fun way of describing what this looks like with a GIF flying across your screen, which is if you've ever Googled for a recipe in the last decade, you get a look at what the SEO optimized internet looks like. This is what we're left with, right? I Google for a recipe, I click the link I want to go navigate, I find this recipe site with someone's life story, 2 videos, an email capture, 7 ads. Like I can't find the ingredients to the thing I'm trying to cook. And why? It's because the incentives are really misaligned. The incentives are for advertising, for cookies, for capture, for tracking. And if you ask this exact same question in GPT, you get a calming experience. You get the answer to your question. You get very simply the ingredients, the steps. And even when these models are wrong sometimes, I'm seeing consumers habituate to AI search. They're just like, it's simpler. Like whether I'm trying to plan a trip for my family and friends, weigh a hotel for my family of 5 in this city against this city, or decide the best way to spend a free afternoon in Cleveland, these things just give me answers. And as they learn me more and more, they tend to refine the answers for who I am, right? I almost think we're having a little bit of disruption of word of mouth for the first time. I was on the phone with a CMO of a large brand recently, and they said, word of mouth has never really been disrupted, but I think we're starting to see that people trust these AI platforms almost as an advisor, as someone that knows them and can guide them. And so at our company, we have a theme, which is, I think there's a lot of fear mongering in the space of SEO is dead, everything is over. I think SEO is the foundation for how these things are being discovered by AI search, but SEO is evolving, and we're seeing that AI is permanently changing the customer journey. So at Scrunch, we said, hey, there's an opportunity to help organizations get visibility into this problem, address the challenges, and work more directly with the AI crawlers and agents that are trying to get information off of your website. So kind of in a 2-minute overview, that's the landscape that we decided to build in. And that's kind of how we're thinking about the opportunity and problem space.
I think, Chris, to your point about we sort of started off kind of building websites for SEO and for Google, then we're building them for, we look at AI overviews now that, obviously part of the Google landscape, looking at ChatGPT. So differentiating could be helpful between looking at like an AI overview, which is really part of the Google landscape, but then ChatGPT is a separate thing altogether, but also one and the same, right? Because it's utilizing AI. So important to understand maybe for our audience, kind of what it is exactly that you're building for. Are you building for those bots that are scraping and looking as people are using ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever? Are you building for the responses in an AI overview, or is that strictly related to Google? So maybe differentiating those two might be helpful.
I think it's a great point. I think the core shift that's happening is the discovery and search process is fragmenting a bit, right? We, for a very long time, have relied on Google as kind of the front door. Obviously, there's segments and verticals. TripAdvisor is a huge source of traffic and data. There's Tor search platforms that are driving volume for folks. But what you just described is now you've got Google, you've got AI overviews powered by Google's AI, by Gemini. You have GPT, Perplexity, you have Grok and DeepSeek. You've got Meta AI, which is, taking over every search function and every Meta property. If you've tried to search recently on Instagram, you've probably frustratingly been dropped into an AI search rather than searching for your friend's, Instagram handle. And so I think everyone's seeing that search is where a lot of the money is made, and that's where there's an intent to purchase or book. And so we're seeing that, to your exact point, Lori, you need to be thoughtful about what content is being surfaced in each one of these new experiences, whether it's overviews, GPT, Perplexity, Meta, or traditional Google. And do not bail on Google, right? Like, your Google foundation is still critical to your business, but we're seeing companies that are tracking referral traffic and citation traffic in these AI models and saying our visitors from AI search are doubling monthly, and they're converting as our highest converting channel. And the reason they're converting so highly is because that entire decision process is happening in the native chat experience. It's like, I'm planning my trip, I'm evaluating hotel versus hotel. By the time I'm clicking, I'm ready to buy, I'm ready to book. And so you're much further down in that purchase funnel. So people are starting to pay attention to these new channels because the volume is ticking up and the conversion tends to be a bit higher.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of Bruce? Are you skeptical? You like to throw in a skeptical
No, I'm not
angle.
skeptical. I'm wondering, how do you know that conversion's happening at double the rate? Like that's an aha moment here, right?
Mhm.
How do you know?
Yeah, the beauty there is you're seeing a handoff, right? So you're able to see that, okay, this visitor came from ChatGPT. Okay, that's a new signal in my Google Analytics or my Adobe, platform, or whatever analytics you've chosen to identify. And so maybe let me back up a step. When we work with companies, there's kind of really three phases of evaluation we start with. We take your website, your core, kind of how people discover what you do, and we help you understand what is the experience of an AI crawler when it goes to your website and tries to make sense of your content. And so we run it through a site audit. We say, okay, when the crawler lands on your website, this is what it understands, this is what it cannot access, but you can see in your web logs when these AI crawlers visit your site. So you have concrete data to say, okay, the ChatGPT user agent hit my website and is trying to access my information. You can go look at that in your web logs today. That's kind of step one. Step two is you can actually see the referral traffic now coming from these AI sources. So I can see, okay, I got a visitor from ChatGPT or Perplexity or Gemini. Once that visitor is on your site, use your typical funnel conversion channels to say, okay, well, what did this visitor do? And so if you've got those funnels built out in Google Analytics or the equivalent tracking platform, we are seeing our customers say, whoa, the amount of visitors from these AI referral sources is more than doubling monthly, and they're converting at a higher rate. Again, because once they're on your site, you can track them, you knew where they came from, and they've done so much research offline outside of your experience. But hopefully your content was influencing what they were consuming. Because if it wasn't, they're probably headed elsewhere. And that's kind of the challenge that new brands and experiences are thinking through.
What Bruce is thinking is that's a bit of a red herring, and it's all actually just a different stage of the funnel. Like a Google ad versus a Google organic, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's like when TripAdvisor came out with their new trip planning thing and everyone converted it 20x. Well, it's the people that are really keen to book something but that's fine. It is going to keep growing, right? And if that ends up averaging out at the same conversion, it's still something we need to have, right? Wherever they're coming from. So.
Well, I love how you know what I'm thinking. That's great, Christian.
Just saving you from having to say things, Bruce, if I can just say it for you.
But also,
You could just relax on this discussion.
Yeah, it's fine.
Tell
Yeah.
everyone what you're thinking.
converting at double the rate is another, right? Like,
Double
and all
what
this
rate,
extra
right? Double
traffic.
what rate? That's what I want to know. Sorry.
Go ahead, Lori. Because
No, I'm just saying, like, converting at double the rate, like double what rate are you referring to specifically?
No, I think maybe I misspoke. Traffic is doubling monthly for most customers coming from AI referral traffic, right?
no,
So,
and okay, that's where my question was, and maybe I wrote it down in my notes. So
sure.
double from 20 visitors a day to 40 is one thing. Doubling from 1 million visitors a day to 2 million is another thing. So like
Yep.
when you're looking at these numbers, and I'm sure it depends on, you've only been in business for a couple of weeks, right? Like who the
Yep.
clients
Yeah.
are, like
Yeah.
what kind of traffic increases instead of 2x?
Yeah.
2x of AI traffic, is that a meaningful number yet? Or is that
Right.
not quite
It's
meaningful
a
yet?
great question. We're getting to meaningful numbers. And what I'd say is like think back through the history of large language models. The AI web search capabilities really didn't come online until about a year ago, right? So if we went to GPT last year at this time and asked a question, the data was out of date by 6 months or a year, right? It would crawl the website, you'd ask GPT a question, be like, warning, this information is 6 months or a year or sometimes 2 years out of date. That was the response a year ago when we asked questions. Now, since then, they've all introduced these web search capabilities. And so they are accessing real-time data. And so you're seeing consumers move to these platforms because they're getting accurate information in a way that they didn't 12, 15 months ago. And so what I'd say is like we really started seeing these numbers tick up in October of last year because again, you really weren't seeing much referral traffic. It was only paid users that had access to web search in GPT. Now web search is available to all users, logged in, logged out, paid or not, because search is a way to make money. And so doubling monthly, you're asking the exact right question. Well, a year ago it was 0. I'm watching it double since October, November, starting by absolutely small numbers, but meaningful, right? If let's say you're booking a cruise and you got 10 visitors in a month and one person booked, now you're at 20, now you're at 40, now you're at 80. We are seeing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of visitors being referred by AI search, again, depending on the size of your overall audience. I think it's safe to say across the board, overall search volume is still dramatically in Google's category. There's a number of reasons for that. Part of it is that you get fewer visitors in an AI search world because they're consuming a lot of information before they visit your website. I think in our largest customers or the customers that are most mature in the platform, they're seeing the amount of referral traffic from AI move into the double digits. So still not huge numbers, but 10, 20% on the top end of companies that are looking at their overall web traffic and saying 20% of our visitors are now coming from AI. So that's the number we're keeping the closest eye on. The speed at which it went from 0 to, in some instances, 20 happening in 6 months, that's a trend line that I think companies should be paying attention to.
It's
I think
Bruce was thinking it's the 20% he wants, that he needs a number like that, which is right. I think of it in terms, it's almost like we went from 2000 when Google launched to 2010 or 15. I think we're going to get that whole 15 years compressed into the next 6 months. I see everyone's asking because they're all freaking out about losing 20% of their traffic,
Yep.
plus more to other things, to social
Yep.
and everything else. And everybody's freaking out because they don't know what's next. So seems like good timing to me.
so. Now
Sorry,
the
Lee.
question is your business and you've relied on Google for years and years to,
Yep.
drive traffic. And now you're trying to understand, now what do I do? Like, how do I shift my behavior? How do I bring in this business from ChatGPT and other LLMs? So that's where you come in, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're doing, and it's specifically, I'm thinking of what sets you apart from your competitors. Obviously, you have competition in this space. So maybe some of the things that you could talk about that are different than your competition, and what you're doing to help businesses drive that traffic.
Yeah.
Who, 1 second, who are you saying the competitors are? Just traditional agencies, like SEO agencies?
No, I mean, there's other companies that are doing what Scrunch is doing. There's a few of them. I think I wrote down their names, which I'll see if I can find in a minute. There's one,
Okay.
Otterly.ai, right? I think they just partnered with SEMrush, um, which is obviously Google search. Peak is another one. PEEC. HubSpot has some sort of a similar type of. So there's probably about 5 or 6 of them anyway.
Yeah. Great question, Lori. I think you'll see more and more companies coming into the category. This is a busy problem area that people are trying to figure out. Our approach is that we're really trying to think through what the marketing platform of the future looks like, given that this customer journey is changing. And so I expect that monitoring will largely be a commodity in the space. You'll see a bunch of companies where you can monitor how you show up. They have similar ways of getting the information to understand your presence in these places. I think where the differentiation comes in is thinking more holistically about what does the journey look like as someone is arriving at your site, what information they've had access to. And we spent a lot of time building out those capabilities in our platform. So if you visit our site, you'll see kind of themes in the platform that we've built. And we actually start with this idea of personas, this idea that if you know who you are selling to, you need to understand that these people are getting different AI search results from you. Right? If Lori, you do a search with your experience and your expertise and your background, and I do an AI search, we're going to get different search results because the models have different memory around us. Our prompts are going to look different. And so this idea that if you are a travel organization, you have 5 different types of target buyers, we start with a very deep analysis of your brand and a platform that generates and maps personas to the types of people you're selling to. That helps us understand the types of prompts and types of responses and whether your brand is showing up. I think it's a lot less critical to look at generic content and searches across the web and say, okay, well, what are the people that I'm trying to sell to searching? And then show what the responses are back from the models. From there, you're moving into monitoring and visibility for how does my brand show up compared to my competitors? What third-party sources and my website sources are being used by the model to answer questions? And then critically moving that into action to say, okay, well, here are the gaps in the areas that I'm not showing up in AI search, and very actionable, saying, okay, well, this is the type of content that is missing from your site. These are the problems with how you are structuring things. The model arrives at your page and can't retrieve it. So help us address these problems so that you can actually get your content sorted and cited by the model in the result, and then see an increase in referral traffic coming through. So I think the core difference is more moving beyond monitoring into insights and then thinking about the layer to better manage and interact with the agents, crawlers, and bots that are trying to access your content.
And is that your knowledge hub? Is that piece that you're talking about that kind of maintains and then delivers the insights?
So there's a category of our product called Insights. Maybe I'll just share my screen briefly again. Can bounce back to this. All right, so hopefully that's viewable and accessible. So I'm just on the Scrunch AI kind of core website here. You'll see 4 categories of the product. One is around basic monitoring. So this is kind of what I spoke about around defining your personas, understanding your presence, your position, and sentiment compared to your competitors across the leading AI models. So am I showing up? How am I showing up? And what can I do about that? At the core of this is understanding what sources are being used by the model to answer these questions, right? So is it using my content? Is it using competitive content? Is it using third-party content? Critical to remember that really gone are the days of AI just looking at your website to answer a question. It wants an unbiased view. So it's going to go out to the internet, look at third-party, competitive, owned content, and formulate an answer. So our customers are often thinking, my brand is no longer what I say it is. My brand, experience, service is what ChatGPT says it is, what Google AI overviews say it is, because it is now representing my offering to my customer base. So monitoring is kind of the entry point. If you don't know how you're being represented, it's pretty tough to make those changes. So a lot of that mapped out here on the insight side to make this actionable. We help you understand where you're showing up and where you're not showing up, and what the content gaps are, what maybe the title, page title, description, metadata gaps are in terms of why is AI not using my content and it's using third-party or competitive content. And so this experience is basically going to show you the gaps in terms of the themes you say you want to be known for, but where you are struggling to show up. That often starts with just a simple site audit. We need to understand when a crawler goes to your website, can it make sense of your content, or is it so JavaScript heavy? There's been quite a few reports in the leading SEO platform blogs saying, look, these AI crawlers cannot read JavaScript. And so they're skipping your content and looking for answers elsewhere. So making sure you have the right unstructured data, the language for a model to interpret your content and drive answers. So insights is really where you go in to look at the gaps and work on content suggestions to address it. You hit on our knowledge hub, which I'll pause after this, is basically saying there's things that you need to keep a timeless eye on, right? So what does my offering cost? Right? If I go to my website, I can probably figure out how much the product or service or experience is. But if I ask ChatGPT how much it is to book that tour or to book that hotel, what information is it accessing to answer that question? And we're able to show you that, look, GPT found 30 websites that you own, and the pricing is inconsistent. Maybe you had a blog post with an old offer or an old promo code. It's trying to sort through all this information to accurately reflect your pricing, your description, your hours, your availability. And it's also going to go look at third-party content. And so the Knowledge Hub is looking at things like pricing, experience details, reviews, support, location, and bringing that information to light in terms of this is how AI is consistently representing this back. So that's how we think about our Knowledge Hub.
Interesting.
There is a lot there, and it's a little hard for me at least, to grasp it without an example. And I don't think you have examples yet of like Experience's company tour operators, right? So we need to find some beta users for you.
Yeah, none we can publicly share. We do have folks in the travel and experience industry using the platform, but I don't have any public case studies I can share at the moment.
Yeah.
You spoke a
Maybe
lot about
GoCity wants to do that, Lori.
well, we're heavily immersed in this at the moment, the monitoring part, and it's interesting to see interesting to see that number one, to your point, ChatGPT is looking for consistency across multiple platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Google is looking for unique content. So you're trying to balance sort of this needing unique content with consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always an easy place to land all the time.
Great.
And the other thing that's very challenging is that, you talked a lot about third parties. Obviously, to people in this particular space, those are the OTAs. So you go to the OTAs, and the OTA sites are really built for Google. They're built for SEO. So, again, you're struggling with the content that you have on these OTA sites, whether or not it's consistent with your own content, while also balancing that whole trick around what type of content are you delivering for Google, right? And SEO. So I think we're very much in a time right now when it's hard for businesses to know where to land. And we're struggling with that balance ourselves, I think.
I feel like I've always got the worst internet out of all of us. Wherever I am in the world, I have the worst internet. Dropping out.
You're not hearing any of this, Christian?
No, I heard the last bit, but I did drop out for a second.
Yeah. But no, Lori, you're moving from a world of really just optimizing for Google as the primary driver of content, primary driver of visitors to your presence to drive conversion, to a more fragmented world. And like this is changing in real time. Like we're here speaking last night, GPT introduced more changes to how they're representing search results. I think we can only expect a faster pace of change from the models, from traditional search, from AI search. So it's something that organizations need to be paying attention to.
So maybe
Sorry.
Sorry, Christian, go ahead.
No, I just think it's great what you're building. I think it's tough because it is moving so quickly, right? It's definitely potentially going to get just run right over, but it might not. I actually don't like GPT search. I'd rather use it sounds just kind of geeky, but I'd rather use the LLM to find information because I find the LLM's far better. When it goes to search, it searches the internet. The internet's generally not very good compared to the AI. But that's my opinion. People are using search because they're used to doing search and they think they get a better result when they use the search option. But I wonder if those two come together and it might make tracking really hard, right? If all of this, I know Sam Altman in the past has talked about real-time sort of training during back and forth, which might make this stuff kind of not trackable, aside from it just comes from ChatGPT or from Gemini.
Right.
I guess none of us know the answer to that, but it's one of the places it might go, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll keep testing. They probably don't know the answer, and I mean, I respect those organizations for rapidly, testing against those ideas, right? Trying to figure out what the best way to serve that is. I mean, deep research is kind of a combination of the two. It's obviously only included in paid plans for now, but if you run a deep research query, it can take 20 minutes for the answer to come back to you because it's using really the depths of its trained in knowledge is going deeper into research sources and PDFs and papers to source an answer for you. So I think that's kind of the combination of modes. I think we can expect to continue to see more of that.
Did you guys see Manus yet? Did you see the demos yesterday of the itinerary search? It's the Bruce, I see shaking. It's the latest. It's Chinese model, and nobody's got access yet. Maybe some people have, but they did a create 5-day itinerary in Japan and places to get engaged and all this stuff, and it went through a whole thing, and it was the best I've seen, but it was their demo. Maybe it took 20 shots to get there, who knows? But the end result looked like it was a single question, full doc, everything you need to plan your trip. And I guess that's what we got to expect now. This stuff kind of moving so fast.
I think we'll see more verticalized examples. I was at a grocery store recently where there was a QR code on the end of the shelf. You could scan it and it would help you find things in the store. I talked to a store clerk and they're like, yeah, we're able to influence what shows up so that we can try to move through inventory, right? So they're basically connecting this localized LLM to their store inventory to be like, well, maybe this product's getting old, or we need to move this because of an incentive to backfill something on a shelf space. And so you scan it and it's like, oh, this is what I should cook tonight, or these are the things I should prioritize buying based on what I'm looking at. So I think, again, understanding what the incentive is behind the model is kind of important. Like, I think the beauty of a lot of this AI search today is it's not easy to directly influence it by gaming it, right? You can't just like make a bunch of tweaks. The model's looking at a bunch of information to answer a question. And so as we see more localized, verticalized versions of that, I think it's important for consumers to keep in mind, okay, maybe this one's guiding me a certain direction because of the incentives behind it.
I'm still confused by what people in our industry can do. Even if they hire Scrunch or a company like yours to really have an impact on AI search, right? Like, so I'm Bruce's bicycle tours in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm like, I spent money on Google. That's worked. I spent money with Meta. That works.
Yep.
I use the OTAs. The OTAs are definitely going to have to reevaluate how this all works since their money all goes to Google. What do you tell little guys like me of how to get into the search on a ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever the favorite search engine of the day is?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for a small business, bicycle tours, I would be thinking about two things. I'd be thinking about top of funnel content that surfaces you in AI search results, right? So if I'm headed to Boulder, Colorado, and I've got a weekend, I would want to see blog content about like how to spend a weekend in Boulder, the best outdoor activities. And if it's only content about your brand, keep in mind that AI is going to try to go get other views. And so I would say, have a blog post on your site that talks about your experience and other ways to spend the day that is kind of rounded out, and then see if that gets cited in the AI answers and see if you get new referral traffic from it. So content is still the name of the game here, but it's thinking about
it sounds like SEO. Yeah.
It's the same type of
SEO,
content. Yeah, that's what I say. SEO is the foundation for AI search. If you're not surfacing in search, the models are using search to access information. The difference is when GPT finds this page that it wants to look at, it's going to go download your content and look at it differently from how the Google index looks at it. So looking at all the language, downloading it, and choosing whether to answer and cite it in the direct result. But I think the core thing is to understand thematically what are people looking for in these platforms, make sure you have content to match, and then track and see if the referral traffic and visits are going up.
Yeah, because the links are totally different, right? I mean, the links are more, if I do a blog post that says all the great things to do in Boulder, it's going to link to like whoever, my blog post is as the refer source, not click here to buy a tour, right? I mean, it's a very different
Correct.
direction.
And I mean, to that point, you're probably rethinking the customer journey once you do have control of that visitor, right? So if they're landing on a blog post, having some calls to action in that post to get them through to book the tour, that looks different because these models haven't introduced advertisement or kind of commercialized yet. So you're not clicking through and paying for that. And it's a weird environment, right? Like GPT, Sam Altman has said he doesn't really want ads in the models. I don't know if that's going to hold true. Maybe they're going to pay per click. And you could imagine microtransactions. If every time I send a visitor, regardless of if it's an ad or not, maybe you're paying for something. We've been working directly with the Perplexity team, talking with their ads organizations. They're testing a lot of new formats. They don't want to just recycle what AdWords has done over the last 15 or 20 years. So I think we're going to see a lot of testing and experimentation in every vertical to try to keep the consumer experience delightful. It still has a long way to go. It's still very, very early.
I think I just heard
So
that Google was going to be adding advertisements to the AI overviews.
Yep.
I think that's a new thing that just came up,
Correct.
which is it's kind of a bummer because personally, one of the reasons I like the AI overviews and I like ChatGPT is due to the conversational element about it, right?
Sure.
So it's not like you're just getting served up all these ads, but now if ads go into AI overviews, and let's face it, more than likely there's going to be a way of monetizing outside of a subscription. There's going to be a way of monetizing these LLMs as well.
Mhm.
You know, for certainly for ChatGPT, I got to believe down the road there's going to be some kind of monetization of.
well, I got into some arguments recently. I'm getting a bit annoyed with the people who think that your AI agent is going to get bribed. So I think there will. I think you can put ads on AI summary, but I think it's got to be clear, like it already is with Google, right? There's got to be a delineator. This is sponsored content, and this is. I don't think you can mix the two, and I don't think ChatGPT would ever mix the two. I know people say, "Oh, that's crazy. The big company got to make money," but I think the stakes for ChatGPT for OpenAI are trillions of dollars. Them selling out to make a few $1 billion, I don't think it's interesting to them. So I think they have to be pure and they have to be trustworthy. And the second we find out we can buy results from ChatGPT, I think they lose their credibility and bang and puff goes their
Well, I don't
trillions
think
of
it's
dollars.
fully trustworthy now, Christian. I mean, depending upon what kind of information you're looking for, there's still plenty of inconsistencies and inaccuracies right now with ChatGPT.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
incompetence, not
I know.
corruption.
Well, that's
So they say.
And what's going on in our country right now?
yeah.
You know,
Let's not go there.
But
I
no,
think
interesting. So, like, understanding where you are in the space. I mean, I guess that's one of the things that I was thinking about as a small business that maybe you don't have the money to hire Scrunch or somebody else to help you with your, strategy. You can at least monitor, like, where are you showing up in AI overviews? Are you showing up? Are you showing up on ChatGPT? Or, what businesses are showing up? Why?
yeah,
Kind of spending some time looking at it, I would suppose could be a good
for
place to
sure.
start.
I mean, I would just encourage companies to start by looking themselves. Like go to these models and see if you're showing up. Like if you GPT for your brand, you're probably going to show up. Like if your brand has been real and existed for a period of time. But moving higher up the funnel to like the shape of search is shifting, right? Kind of gone are the days of me going to ChatGPT and typing in Carnival Cruise. Like I don't do that. Like I might go to Google and type in Carnival Cruise because it's directing me to the website and I have to pay a bunch of money for my own name. GPT is much more human. It's much more like the intent of the question of like I'm thinking of doing something like this. And so if you're a small business listening, I would say go start by asking questions about your service, your experience directly in the models, and then move up the funnel a little bit. Ask for questions about the themes of how people might spend time and explore it. Test it in the different models. Know, though, that you're getting results that are custom to you. Like you might see this, like I've seen GPT do this, where if you ask a question about your business, it'll say, XYZ in parentheses your company because it knows it's answering a question about your company because you've asked it. And so, I'm not getting that same result because I don't own that company. And so you need to understand just how personalized these results are. I did want to comment on the shape of commercialization because I think if 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we'd all been asked, do you think you will pay to search online? I think we all would have said no. Like Google's been free forever. It's pretty good at what it does. The number of people that are paying to use Perplexity and GPT to have a different search experience is significant, right? So I think just how different is the future of commerce and transaction going to look? I don't know. I'm trying to keep pace with it and help companies understand their representation and maintain control of that customer journey. But I would not have guessed that I would pay $20 a month to use GPT and play with their web search capability ahead of others. So I think we should keep an open mind into what the new formats and environment might look like.
Well, that $20 is a lot more than just search, isn't it?
It is, but that was one of the main reasons for a lot of people of just like, you know
Yeah.
what, I want to go do the real time. And with Perplexity, that's another big component of it. So I think you're absolutely right. There's multiple capabilities baked in, but search has been a part of it.
So we only have a couple minutes left. This has been great, awesome, super interesting. Let's go with the speed round because we like to sometimes end on a speed round. And I think we're talking about what I'm really interested in is monetization. Let's take it out 2 years, 1 to 2 years. What do you think how are these AI, we'll call them engines, going to monetize? So it's a guess, obviously. You said yourself, Chris, you don't know. But we're going to start with you with a speed, and the speed round means, give us a quick best case answer, what you think of where does the monetization come from?
Yeah, I think organizations are going to end up paying for traffic. Similar to Google, but it's going to look different. I do think we're going to think of visitors more organically, and companies will pay for referral traffic from these models. I think there will be ads. Ads are kind of expected. Perplexity is already doing it. So I think you'll have normal ad formats that we've grown to know and love in the current ecosystem. But I think more exploratory, I think we won't even consider the fact that, oh, these are coming from these places and I'm paying a microtransaction for the fact that they're directing it to me. I think that's a potential direction of the world.
Lori?
I don't think I have a very good answer. Just to be really honest, I don't. I mean, I do think they obviously have to be monetized unless they're going to be funded by the governments, which I don't think we want that either. So I would have to say, agree with Chris. It's got to be monetized by the businesses that want the traffic to some degree. Don't know what that looks like though.
And I'm sure Christian does have an answer.
Yeah, I'd say similar. The first thing I think of is Honey. Is Honey the browser extension that took 2% and it just sat on everybody's affiliate programs?
Yeah.
I think everything ends up at 2%.
Mm.
I think the displayable ads are fine, but the AI agent's just going to ignore displayable ads. So those will stay for humans, but where it's the AI agent or the AI personal agent who's scraping out the ads to show me real results, it's 2% coming from the merchant. So now we'll give Stripe their piece, Visa their piece, and the AI agent, the LLM their piece.
Yeah.
And we'll be at 6% instead of 25. And then one more thing, the website gets intermediated since I'm into this whole intermediation thing. So Google's gone,
Yep.
OTAs are gone, websites are gone.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. I think websites look like repositories of data for agents to take action. So the simplest is a transaction fee, maybe a smaller fee to book a meeting, book a chat. So I agree with Christian. I think it's going to be an interesting internet down the road.
Yeah.
It sounds a little bit like meta search, just a very little bit. But when Kayak started, it was all pay per click, right? And whether it was 10 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, pay per click. And then they went to conversion and getting a bigger commission for conversion. And I do think it's going to go back to pay per click, but a tiny amounts of pay per click. But only certain people will do that, right? So the bigger companies will pay per click. Maybe it's today's OTAs instead of giving their money to Google, they'll pay per click for the AI engines. where the smaller companies won't. So once again, they're going to rely on those OTAs who have paid per click and get that traffic to make the bookings.
But it might be, what is a click, right? And a click's always been obvious to us what it is today still, but in the future, like what is a click? It's the agents chatting back and forth. Is maybe there's never a click.
Well, there's going to have to be a company that will measure clicks, right? Is that a startup in the making?
What do? You measure clicks on the internet. There we go.
Like we
We'll
should end this
discuss that next
podcast
time.
and Bruce can get busy building.
Yeah.
I don't do tech startups, Chris. Okay, any last words?
No, thank you for having me. Love the conversation and appreciate having the chance to be on the show. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, best of luck. I think
Thank
it's a great space. I think I was just at ITB last week, and this is what everyone's talking. Everyone's talking about this because it's it's everybody's search, it's everybody's customer acquisition. So everybody needs to pay attention to this. So yeah, best of luck with everything you're doing.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Chris. It
Everyone.
was great to connect with you, and I'm sure we will do more soon. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Until next time.